Welcome to Beans and Breakdowns, a podcast dedicated to bridging the gap between specialty coffee and the heavy music community. I'm so excited to be joined on this episode by Kim Song Sternkopf, vocalist of the Danish Blackgaze band Mul. So grab a fresh cup of coffee and wake the fuck up! Hey, Caffeinated crew. I'm here with Kim Song Sternkopf from Sternkopf from the band Mul. They're based in Aarhus, Denmark. That was a mouthful for me to say, so I'm just gonna I'm just gonna go ahead and say welcome, Kim. How are you doing this morning for me, afternoon for you?
Yeah. I'm doing really great. Just went from our rehearsal space we went and tried to rehearse some of our upcoming album for our release shows. So that's what's in the works. I think we've booked like at least 5 rehearsals from now until the 28th, where we're trying to fill out one of the big venues here in our hometown, Aarhus.
That's awesome. And you guys are also, I saw that there's a cruise booked.
Yes. It's with Live Nation or Copenhagen. We actually played there at one point, a midnight slot that was really amazing. 4,500 people just stayed up to see us live. That was one of the big experiences, in my opinion. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. So let's start things off. What are you drinking over there?
I am drinking a Kenyan coffee. I think that's my preferred, or at least some of the acidities and the fruitiness of a lot of Kenyan AA. That's what I prefer. But for roasts, I know. Well, I like light roasts.
Yes,
it does a lot of great stuff to your mouth, especially when and also for espressos as well. There's just something about bringing out those fruitier notes. And fruity, nuttier, or sometimes I wouldn't say earthy, but
it has definitely like an organic, almost earthy, but stone fruit maybe kind of notes.
And this specific bean is I can't remember it quite right. I think it's I bought these beans from Cabra, and that's a roastery / cafe in Aarhus, and I think they have a website as well where you can order subscriptions and stuff like that. This is from Kiruga. Yeah, it's called Long Mile Coffee Project. So I think this is the first batch that they've brewed, this particular roastery or a combined roastery and farm. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a favorite one of mine. If I should just choose anything, I just really, really love the Kenyan coffees.
Right.
It just has a lot of fruitiness and acidity going for it. Citrus notes is something that I've always been really fond of in coffee, and when I found that you could try to get some of those citrusy notes out of coffee, that just got me hooked like instantly.
Yeah. I'm drinking a coffee from Onyx Coffee Labs, which is from Arkansas. It's the Ethiopia Demeka Becha. It's a washed Ethiopian.
Yeah.
So just, it's got all those great stone fruit, berry notes. It's definitely really, really fruity, really floral. Mm-hmm. Usually I would drink this in the afternoon, but I wanted to do something special for this interview. So I went ahead and got a washed Ethiopian.
I don't know. Have you ever interviewed James Dorton from Black Crown Initiate?
Not yet. No.
You should really do that. He and I, when we went on tour with Rivers of Nile and Black Crown Initiate, we totally bonded on coffee
stuff.
Yeah. He does barista work at home. So when we were on that tour, we just had our daily activity going from one European city to the other was, today you're the one who is supposed to find that perfect cafe where we're gonna get that shot, and then that just became our thing.
Yeah.
So and I think I brought my AeroPress on tour, and that kind of we had one problem. I didn't bring a grinder. So we had to go find a grinder somewhere, and I ended up finding an old antique,
like a Hario or something.
Yeah, no, even older. Like 2 seconds, I'm just gonna show you. Nah, I forgot it at work. Yeah, I forgot it at work. Yeah, I forgot it at work. Well, it was a metal grinder, and it was like it could really do that Turkish mocha fine grind, but it was so freaking heavy. I bought it, and it was like this size, but it was so fucking heavy.
Yeah.
So I think we found 4 bags of beans somewhere where Coffee Collective had some of their, I think it was Kearney. There was we got a bag of Kearney beans. And, when you're trying to find a backstage where you can find find some proper water and a kettle that's not totally infested with
lime
calcium,
scaling,
lime scaling as well. And it just became like a really obsessive project, and the other members from the bands were like, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah, but we're trying to brew, we
this is important.
Yeah, it's very important. And when we finally got to brew it, we had 4 of the other guys who were like, yeah, that's really good. And the others were like, yeah, just where are those beers? Where are those beers at?
There's always those guys.
Yeah.
Getting more into like the local Scandinavian coffee, especially around Aarhus or where you're at, is there a local coffee shop or roaster that you gravitate towards?
Most definitely. I don't know if you've heard about Søren Stiller.
I have not.
Okay, he has something called Stiller Coffee. He used to have a bar called Great Coffee, but now he just rebranded, or it's basically Søren Stiller Markussen. He's like, he has this roastery, and I really like a lot of his tasting profiles. For at least he has a lot of I think it's both South American and Costa Rican coffees and stuff like that. And he's like 7 times like Danish coffee champion and 3 times world finalist. So he's like, he knows his stuff. When you meet him, he's down in the shop. He's as a Scandinavian, I feel like he's always friendly and greeting, but really craft focused. So you don't go down to his shop and try to sound geeky, because he really, he knows his stuff.
He's gonna trap you in something.
Yeah. Well, just sticking to tasting and stuff like that. That's always the sure thing. So when I buy beans for espresso, that's where I buy my beans at. It looks like a laboratory when you get in there. I don't know if you've been to Berlin ever.
No, I've never made it over. I've never made it past really France.
Okay. So there's another similar place in Berlin. With big roasters and stuff like that. It just looks so industrial. He has a whole bar down there in the city with what's it called? Siphon. Siphon coffee. Yeah. So it just looks like a lab, and I really like that vibe. A cafe is also a lot of interior, so he focused on a lot of wood and metal. So going down there, you go there for the coffee and that's it. But if I go to Copenhagen, I have to visit Coffee Collective.
I had Paul on, who runs a roastery in
really?
Charlotte. Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, he runs, it's called Night Flyer Roastworks. in
Ooh.
Charlotte. Yeah. So that's on my list to go visit. But when I asked him where his favorite coffee is, he said basically Coffee Collective is just the greatest coffee shop in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely trying to plan some time to visit the Scandinavian area. And, I definitely want to visit Copenhagen and Berlin and all of that and check out all of the amazing coffee, because I follow European Coffee Trip as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, me too.
And they're like, it just seems like the coffee culture, which just talking to you for this 10 minutes or so, I can tell the coffee culture is completely different. It's a lot more open and about education and
it's
sustainability.
Rich, and what you find out is there's just a lot of home enthusiasts who I've been at a lot of coffee bars down in the city, and we have like a lot, and I know that everybody if they have respect for themselves, they do a lot of specialty coffee. I think that's pretty exciting. I think the internet does a lot and James Hoffman as well. He does a lot.
That's the V60 method I use, is the Hoffman method. Yeah. I would like to transition into the music side of things now. What was your introduction to metal music?
Well, that all started. They got me when I was young. I grew up in a pretty religious home, and I think metal music was not exactly what my parents imagined that I would be delving into. But I think I was 5 years old. I had this great, or our family had this huge box of cassette tapes with all kinds of stories and children's songs and stuff like that. I used to sit in our sofa and listen to, with my Sony Walkman, listen to DuckTales and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then there was this cassette tape, mixtape that was recorded a lot of children's songs on top of it, and the final 3 minutes of the tape had a little bit of Metallica in it.
Okay.
So it was Battery, and it was just past the intro and into where things got and remember, I just remember my brain exploding at that point. I was totally caught off guard when I found that tape, or at least that part, and I didn't tell anyone. It used to be my uncle's tape, and I know that he used to listen to Metallica, so that must have been the subtle influence just seeping our way into our religious home. So I practically used that tape up, like those 3 minutes. I just kept rewinding it and listening to it again. So, and when I got access to the local public library and you could borrow CDs, my mother was, I think she was somewhat worried because she just saw all these alternative punk and rock and stuff. Like, where does this come from? That was just, I think I went to this librarian and asked him, do you have any Christian heavy rock? And this guy, he was like, I don't know. Well, I know, this is Sepultura. Max Cabrera, he's actually a Catholic, I think. Yeah. So he got me into Soulfly, and then he was like, but Soulfly, that was okay, but you gotta dig Sepultura. So he gave me Schizophrenia and Roots and all of that stuff. And that was my way into, and I think I'm just as huge nerd today, but me and that librarian, we, he wore a tie and looked really nice, but he just had the most incredible taste in music.
He just gave you a wide spectrum, and then you kind of pick from there.
Yeah, and it was not strictly metal as well. Like he was like, there's so much alternative music that you can just, go take a plunge, go explore. Mm-hmm. So I remember when I went to boarding school, a lot of my friends went down to my room to get recommendations of what to listen to, because I always went to I went to another city, and then there was another public library, and I just bought more CDs, and yeah. So I think my tastes kind of developed. When you're a teenager, you sometimes tend to become kind of elitarian in some ways. I had some moments where I was like, I'm only listening to metal. Right. I went there. But at the same time, I had a lot of friends who really liked indie rock and delving into the emo scene and screamo and stuff like that. Yeah. So getting influences and not being afraid to, get trapped in the culture, the subculture of it. I think that curiosity led me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like a super well-rounded musical journey. I love that.
In Denmark, the music scene is kind of because it's such a small country, you in comparison to like the UK, where we have toured a lot, the scene is just not that big in Aarhus or in Denmark as a whole. So like you get to, when you do start performing and stuff like that, it wouldn't be unheard of if a goth rock band played with a surf punk band or anything like that, or a grindcore band maybe warming up for a symphonic death metal band or anything like that. I really like how, for instance, black metal or more alternative rock has made its way into a lot of, how you combine genres today and what people are willing to go and explore and listen to. So I see us as some of the bands that actually likes to, push that envelope and not get caught up in genre definitions, but, is it good? Is it not? Is it listenable? Yeah.
Yeah. The genre blending that you guys do in Møl is definitely original and refreshing at the same, it's just, I love that, black and gaze or black gaze is what I know a lot of people coin it, but it's definitely super original. And when you listen to it, it's like, I know that this is Møl. It has a super, super signature original sound. So, I think it goes back to your roots in metal and, being well-rounded in music, but obviously the outfit as a whole has to be that way as well. And collaborate. That's
one of the reasons why I can really give Nikolai a lot of credit, our main songwriter. He actually doesn't come from metal originally. He grew up on Sonic Youth and Slow Dive and
I can hear all of that.
A lot of noise rock, and a lot I think the common denominator for all of us is actually the Danish indie band called Mew. Those guys are a huge inspiration to all of us. Especially, there's an album called Fringers that's just made a huge impact, and we have friends in another band called Vola, and I know that they've also dug that sound, but in this, I know they have just a more downtoned, genty vibe going on than we do. But the inspirations are clear. So I know that the melting pot, or at least the the significance of where each of us comes from musically makes a lot of difference in how we approach songwriting.
Talking more about kind of, discovering musical taste and things like that. How did you find your vocal tone? Like, what were some of the influences and the process of doing that?
Well, I actually started in death metal. That was where I started out. I actually mainly did growls. So screaming and the whole high register thing is something that has developed over time. For some years, I also played in a hardcore band, and that also got me to push the limits of what I wanted to do with my voice. But I know one of my main inspirations actually comes from another Scandinavian band called Binja Reach. Their frontman Ilka was one of my hugest inspiration back in 2000. I can't remember, 2008, 2009, maybe two. Yeah. Well, they made an album where this guy just screamed tones. Like, his vocalization was something that I was like, yeah, I want to do that. So I think knowing what to do with my voice and slowly incorporating more song technique into my way of performing, that has, I think that's one of the things that have shaped my vocals at least. But my scene presence is something else. One of the things that I really liked when we started touring in the UK, we started touring with Svalbard. I think that was our first tour in the UK. That was with the former Holy Roar band Svalbard, and we did a run with them, and people weren't. I think they were expecting a more drowsy, or at least, typically shoegazy vibe. Right. But I come from hardcore. Yeah. I really like to be that emotional conductor of, if you see our band, like, visually, there's a wall of sound and a wall of people standing right there. And I get to be, I think, the voice, or at least the putting a body to that expression. Right. So I know a lot of reviewers were kind of shocked how much I like to get up in people's faces. But, I think that's what makes, our music, or at least in a live setting, more energetic and more approachable in some way. I really like how Nikolai writes songs that, in post-rock and in more introvert music, like post-rock, post-metal, you tend to spend at least 5, 6, 8 minutes to get to the point. We just skip that. I love that. And you're right about the stage presence was very unexpected. When I found a live video of you guys, I was like, this is not what I was expecting at all. Like, there's a lot of this and a lot of, hand motions, and the expression is all there. So it's just, you're right about that. It is unexpected. The process of writing lyrics, is that come from you, Nikolai, a collaboration? I mainly do that. Okay. I think there was actually a previous vocalist before me, Stefan. He did EP 1 and 2. Okay. So that's one of the reasons you might notice a big difference in vocalization. He was actually a pretty introverted guy, and I think he fitted the depressive black vocal thing more than I did. I actually started, I saw the band performing live in a venue where I worked as a concert photographer at that time, and our manager Mirza Radonchika, I was in another band that we were sharing like management, and he actually was the guy who recommended Møl reaching out to me when they found out that it wouldn't work out with Stefan. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time in the beginning trying to, become more introvert in my expression. It was so fucking hard. It just doesn't. I think I am the only extrovert or mainly extrovert guy in Møl, and my stage performance kind of matches that. So in the beginning, I was really unsure of how much can I dial myself back, or at least my performance back in a way that's kind of suited for this style. But when I found out that the dramatic elements and the ambience and the how quickly we go into the deep emotions, you can put an expression to that.
Right.
So I was really caught up as a photographer taking photos of them live and seeing the former frontman being this introverted guy and having that sense of sensibility and vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I like to incorporate that, but when I imagine a live set, I always see like a narrative, an emotional narrative. You can be very extrovert at one moment, and then you can dial back into yourself. And mm-hmm. I did 1.5 years at theatrical arts, so I know what works in that sense.
Right.
I ended up dropping out of that education at one point because I had to choose between music and theater. So it kind of makes sense.
In the emotional sense of, performing as well.
Yeah.
When approaching the lyrics for the band, the word choices and the phrasing are extremely, I would feel like, specific. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of themes there that seem to kind of incorporate even into the newer EP Investige. What are some of the themes that you approach when writing for Møl?
Well, much of this actually derives from I got offered or at least started rehearsing with Møl when I went through a half year of being burned out from stress. I was doing trying to do freelancer as a photographer and do my education as well as a social worker and play in another band as well. Mm-hmm. And my body just said stop at that moment. And the opportunity came to, do something about like I had 6 months to find my footing again. And, when I started out rehearsing with Møl and writing with them, I was actually burned out. So it comes from that place. I went through an existential like crisis at that moment. Mm-hmm. So at that time I couldn't talk that much about it, but it was very much about mortality and mm-hmm. making, reconciling the idea that I might not be right about how I saw life at that moment. I actually I lost my faith during that period and had to kind of find my way of dealing with that. I actually end up in the earth at one point and I can't do anything about it. And maybe there might not be that afterlife that I've got, taught as a kid.
Right.
So Jord, which means earth, is actually pretty much about that.
Right.
And diorama is kind of like if that was about existentialism and knowing, what's in store for, we live such short lives. What to do with all of that? We all want to make some kind of be significant to somebody,
right?
But accepting that, we are 5 minutes from midnight. Our species is that was really. I think it shook my world, and getting a band or at least getting into working with people who are like as open-minded about that, and could handle the kind of vulnerability that I was going through at that time. That, in my opinion, was really, or at least when I can see it in retrospective, it was really healthy for me to get to question a lot of things. So the upcoming album Diorama is actually, if your was about existentialism, this is more about introversion. I think it's, so if there is no God, if I've lost my faith, what do we end up with? Right. We end up with each other. We end up with, who we are surrounded with. We end up with the family that we grew up in. We end up with people that, you didn't choose to be with, but you end up, for better or for worse, spending time with them. So Diorama has its. I am also really inspired by movies, and the idea of using diorama as a theme actually came from Ari Aster's work in Hereditary.
Okay.
Have you seen the movie?
I have, yeah.
So the main protagonist, she really has a fucked up sense of dealing with her trauma.
Yes.
So she creates these dioramas, these 3D representations of her most vulnerable moments, and carefully just recreates and analyzes trauma that she's been through, and also when she's going through it, like she just gets lost in that.
Right.
I think that was such a powerful image in some way when I saw that movie, getting caught up in something, from your past that kind of keeps you locked in this place without, she could have the opportunity to move forward from it, but it actually ended up encapsulating in her and keeping her in that state of dismay. And keeping her whole family in that state. So I think I see a lot of references to my own life and a religious upbringing and stuff like that. That I've taken a lot of the subjects or incidents in my life of experiencing past traumas or manipulation, stuff like that.
Right.
And really gotten to, take a closer look at, some of those moments, but also trying to see how do we get past it? How do I get from confrontation to working through those emotional stages until a point where you can find some kind of, what's the word?
Closure?
Yeah. I don't know if there's any closure in this life, but at least in your mind, you can kind of take some parts of your life and say, like, I can't do anything about that. This is not something that I have control over, but I can choose how to view it, and I can choose how to act. I don't have to follow the pattern that that I've followed until this point. So that's basically some of the, at least some of the themes that I've gone through. It's really about a lot of retrospection and dealing with a lot of trauma in my life to kind of get, I don't know if you can get over stuff, but at least you can reconcile yourself with a part of yourself instead of trying to, run from it. I'm not running from having, the parents that I have or the upbringing that I have or have met people that I have. It's a part of the whole package.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely about coming to terms with the parts that you can't change.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for being vulnerable and transparent and sharing your story with me this morning. I've really enjoyed our conversation together. I just have one last question before we close this out this morning.
Yeah.
What is your favorite city for Beans and Breakdowns?
Yeah. Okay. Berlin.
Is there a specific area? Because I have friends that told me that there's an area where there's 2 venues and this record store and stuff like that.
Yeah. Near Cassiopeia in Berlin.
Okay.
There's a lot of great coffee spots as well. And there's this one... Concierge Coffee at Paulinke-Ufer Straße, I think. Concierge. That's the place to go. And there's another coffee shop called Ben Rahim that also has some pretty good specialty coffee as well. And it's not that far from Cassiopeia, and a lot of it might be a bit punk rock, or with a lot of graffiti and stuff like that. But I really like that urban setting that's going on, especially in that part of Berlin. That's my. I think Berlin is a pretty good pick.
I hear a lot about that kind of area, the industrial kind of graffiti area, that a lot of people love that. It's still not quite gentrified and stuff like that. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast on a Saturday after your practice and everything. I've really enjoyed this chat we've had. Take care of the rest of your day. Have a great rest of your Saturday. And I look forward to hearing the new album coming out November 5th.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beans and Breakdowns. I want to say a huge thank you to Kim for coming on the podcast and hanging out with me, talking about coffee and, of course, about Mul. You can follow Mul on Instagram at muldk, or find them on Bandcamp at muldk.bandcamp.com. And make sure to check out Dialama, the new full-length from Mul, coming out on Nuclear Blast on November 5th. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. You can also follow us on Instagram at Beans and Breakdowns, and keep track of us on the web at beansandbreakdowns.com. Until next week, stay caffeinated and wake the fuck up!